Hello. Back in the days of videocassette recorders, be they professional or domestic, the last thing you ever wanted to do was select a videocassette recorder for a format where only the one machine was ever made. Because if you did that, you'd have to keep your machine running forever if you wanted to ever be able to recover your tapes. And I've featured this particular obscure format before, and essentially only one model of machine was ever made for that. And it happened in the professional arena too. A little while ago I featured this rather wonderful camcorder from JVC. It's a professional camcorder, records onto quite standard miniDV tapes using a rather non-standard 720p high definition recording. And the problem being that only JVC equipment could play back those recordings properly. But that was okay because they made a number of these camcorders, several different models, so if you had one and you had your recordings on it and it broke down, well, I guess you could buy another one, at least for a while. They also made an accompanying video recorder which you could play back your tapes on. Additionally though, this would record the tapes and would also record onto standard enough DVCAM size large DV tapes. But can you see where this is going? This can record on standard tapes using the 720p non-standard, if you like, high definition format. But the cameras can't play these. And this was the only model ever made that could record onto these large tapes using that particular resolution. So this was a machine of one model for the entire format. Very unfortunate if you've got some extremely important recordings on these tapes and you can't play them back, or at least not properly play them back. There was a very limited capability for some Sony equipment to play these 720p recordings, but it was extremely limited and you couldn't recover the recording digitally. So that makes this kind of, in a way, one of my favourite machines because I love obscure video recorders. Now, I have featured this one before in the video in the video where I mentioned this camcorder as well, and this one had a torn cable between the video head and the deck, and I may have managed to sort of repair that. But I wasn't able to test it because the deck didn't function. And if you watch that video to the very end, you'll have seen that I solved that problem too. I got the deck kind of functioning, but not really. So let's spend a little bit more time on this very rare, obscure video recorder to see if we can get it to run again. So this is a JVC BR-HD50, and it will take these larger tapes. Now this particular recording has a normal DVCAM recording on it, but the point being we need to be able to get it to take it and play it properly. And last time I tried, I think it wasn't succeeding in lacing up. I also don't have quite the right power supply for it, but I do have an adapter, so as long as I'm careful with my power supply, I can apply the 12 volts to that. Right, let's take the lid off again and remind ourselves how far we got with it. I've set up my lab power supply here to 12 volts, center positive, and confirm on the meter here that it is the correct polarity, because this indicates 12 volts center positive. So that's the correct polarity. I'm not quite sure what the current consumption is. I think it's quite significant. Okay, we're drawing 400 milliamps. Okay, we have the machine powered up. The operate light is on. If I just switch it on, you can hear a fan working. It seemed to drive the carriage forward and back again. Perhaps it was checking there was no tape in there. And of course this takes two sides of cassette. It's just switched itself off, which is a little odd. Why did it do that? And it's completely off now. It's drawing a small amount of current, but nothing else is happening. Power cycle that. And it's drawing over an amp. It seems quite a lot. It's flashing operate. So it's going into some sort of alarm mode. I think. So it doesn't think the deck is in the right position. Let's try loading a cassette in it when I power it up and see if it'll load the tape. That's correct, but it's not laced. Flashing operate, and it's not laced. I think it's going to shut down again in a moment. So it's as though it's going into some sort of emergency shutdown mode, and then I have to power cycle it. Power it down. Being a professional machine, there are emergency overrides on the deck. One will be for lacing and one will be for front loading. Let's operate. There we go. That's to eject, I think. Yes, that would eject. But let's go back in and see if we can lace. With it fully down, can I make it lace up? It feels like this is just spinning. Nothing's happening. And maybe that is the problem. Nothing's happening. Okay, let's take the tape out. Now, when I first got this machine, it would lace. It would lace even without a tape in there. So, we think the mechanism should be in good order. Or it was. Normal video recorders don't have this sort of override feature, but professional machines do, because you might, be in a position where you're trying to broadcast live to lots of people and you've got your tape stuck in the machine. You need to be able to get the tape out in a hurry. So this wheel here should operate the lacing mechanism, and it's spinning. There's nothing, it's just not engaging with anything that. So we'll have to investigate that, which will no doubt involve taking the deck out. So let's give you a closer view of that. So here I believe is the loading motor. That's the loading override. So there's some sort of gearbox here, and we're not getting any drive out of that down to the deck below. How would I gain access to this part of the mechanism? Would I take the carriage off? I don't know what I have to do to take what I have to take off in order to gain access to this. Let's see if we can find a service manual that will help us at all. Well, I can't find the service manual for this machine anywhere. However, I found the service manual for the JVC BR-HD50, which seems to share the same deck. And actually, I think I have one of those machines somewhere, but you won't be able to just swap the deck over because it'll be different. But at least it gives us a few clues. One thing is we should be able to read the error messages, and I'm pretty sure it's going to say that loading failed to proceed because this is just twiddling around and not doing anything. One thing I might do in a minute is apply a small voltage to the loading motor and just confirm that nothing happens. But first, let's see if it'll stay powered up for long enough that I can get into the service mode, for which you need to press menu and stop or play. So I'll power it up and see if we can do that. So holding, I may need to switch it on rather. In the no cassette condition, press menu for 2 seconds whilst pressing stop or play. So this may not do anything unless it's powered up. No, okay, switch it on and then do the same. Nothing's happening. And it's shut down again. Let's configure our power supply to about 5 volts at low current. Be nice if we could unplug the other end of the motor driver connector, but I think it's deep underneath the deck. Oh, is it there? I might be able to unplug that. No, that's the wrong connector. The one I want is further in. How awkward. Let's take the bottom off. And does this panel swing out the way? Okay, I think I've unplugged the other end of this motor, so I can now apply voltage to that a little bit more safely. I like to unplug the other end if I can. It should be designed to be able to handle a bit of back EMF anyway, but it's best to unplug it if you can. So let's just see what happens if I drive this motor in whichever direction. Here we go. Ah, I think it tried to unlace then. Let's try the lacing. Oh, it's lacing just fine. Nothing wrong with the mechanism. And unlace. Okay. That's eliminated a lot, but why the manual lace and unlace wasn't working, I don't know. Maybe that only works if it's already partly laced. Let's just prove that. Maybe it disconnects when it's in the unlaced situation. Or maybe it just doesn't work. Don't understand that bit, but what we can do now, I think, is manually load a tape and get it into the laced condition and see where it gets us. This goes very fast considering it's 5 volts. It feels like 5 volts might be too much. Right, so let's load a tape in and get it laced and then see what happens if we power it up in that condition. I mean, this is starting to feel like it might be a mode switch problem, isn't it? What would Mr. 12 volt vids reckon of it? I reckon he'd say it's a mode switch. Right, it's fully down. I'm not sure if I can quite get to the motor contacts that way. I'm going to have to do it underneath. Let's see if I can get to it from here. Okay, let's see if we can get it to lace up. Okay, it's laced. So if I now reconnect those motors and reconnect it to the 12 volts, let's see what happens if we power it up in that laced condition. It may, if it has any intelligence, unlace. You know, we'll get to learn a lot about what's going on with the mechanism. Okay, I've reconnected both of the motors. I'm scared that this might touch something it shouldn't touch, so I'm going to fit at least some of these screws back again. Okay, so we're in a position that it's laced. It will probably try to unlace when we power it up, if things are even trying to work. Power up. It's making an odd ticking noise. Oh, I've got my current limit too low. Silly. Try again. So when we switch it on, is it going to do anything? It's like it's not even trying to operate the lacing motor. Just going to go into abort mode again in a minute. That noise is a fan, I'm pretty sure. So it's just sitting there, laced and not doing anything. No, the head drum is not spinning. It's just sat there, fan running at the back, and nothing else apart from the display on. If I press eject, anything at all? Nothing but the power button is working. It is odd that I can't override the loading. Am I doing something wrong with that? Ah, while turning the gear, push it in, it says. Ah, I didn't read that. While turning the gear, also push it in to drive loading and unloading. So maybe there wasn't a fault there. You have to push it in. With this one you don't. Still nothing's happening. Okay, I'll switch it off and I'll see if I can unload the tape. Nothing's happening. Alright, I'm going to do it with the power supply again. Get the tape out and then look at the mode switch if I can find that. Right, with just about 3 volts on my power supply, let's see if I can... So I actually put positive on the red in order to do the unlace. You can also, if you take the front panel off, I think you can get to the real motor with a screwdriver and take up the tape slack, but that's a bit fiddly, so I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to not worry too much about the tape slack. Here goes. Let's see if we can unlace. Right. I've unlaced, and now take the tape out. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit of tape snarling, but I'll be careful with it. Well, that's not too much damage. I can deal with that. Okay, so we're thinking mode switch. Where is the mode switch, which tells the mechanism where it is? Can we access it without a major strip down? Can we clean it without taking it out? Will it make any difference? All these questions. Well, the user manual, I think, implies that the mode sensor gear, which I think is going to be the mode switch, is roughly here in the middle. Ah, it's there. It's right there. What's on the other side of it, I don't know. Where the actual mode switch is, we don't know. But let's see if we can take this circuit board out of the way and maybe gain access to that mode gear. Okay, I've undone the screw at the bottom of this PCB, which is awkward to get to because this other one's in the way and I don't really want to unplug it all. There's one at the top. Can we slide this PCB out of the way now? And this little gear here is the mode sensor gear. This is the mode sensor gear, and I'm going to guess that all it does is operate wipers on the other side of this PCB. So there's no... It is correctly aligned. There's an alignment mark on there and on the control plate. This is called the control plate, and they are lined up properly. So the switch contacts are going to be on the other side of that PCB. How am I going to get to clean them? So this here is the mode switch. Oh, well, that's not too hard to get to. I could apply a bit of switch cleaner to that, try to keep it off these guides or clean the guides afterwards. I can have a go at squirting some switch cleaner in that, but what's going to be more or less impossible is for me to work it in other than by driving this motor in and out. And I now see from the service manual it's 3 volts I should be using on this. I was being a bit generous with 5 volts. These are the wires for that motor, so I can apply 3 volts to that end, or this end, or the motor itself, and drive that in and out a number of times and see if that helps at all. And by doing this number of times, we can work that switch cleaner in, and maybe, if our problem is with the mode switch, that will get it going again. And you can see the mode switch, I don't know if you can see it, it's rotating as I'm doing this. So I'll do that a number of times. And see you in a moment. Okay, having done that, we can refit the motor contacts, reinstall this PCB, and see if it makes any more sense. Okay, so having cleaned up that mode switch, let's power it up and see if anything's different. I doubt it, to be honest. Put a tape in. Oh, it's flashing operate, so it's still not happy. Is it confused about this? Is this our problem? It's got confusion in there. Alright, let's go back to that idea we had earlier of loading a tape. Because hopefully it won't necessarily eject it straight away. So I'll just have it loaded. I'm not going to lace it up at this point. Right, it's fully loaded. Now power it up. Because if we've got some sort of confusion going on about the eject mechanism, then we may have got round that now. So let's try that. HDV won't be lit now because it's a DVCAM tape. Oh, maybe it is. Go on. It's just laced. No, part laced. Oh, it's lacing, I think. Did it try to lace? It's part laced and got stuck. That's not fully laced. Why would it be part laced? It's mechanically jammed? It part laced. And probably stalled the motor. There's something odd going on. Right, do you know what? Do I have a BR-DV5000? Because if I do, I'm going to have a good look at it now. Let's go and find that if I have one. Okay, we are somewhat stalled on this one. Let's have a look at this machine, which is sort of related. It's a lot smaller. It's definitely not the same machine at all. This one I do have a power supply for, so that's handy. We could possibly repurpose this power supply to help us out. Okay, this is a much more sort of prosumer deck. That's working properly. Let's take a look at the mechanism on this one. And what we find inside is exactly the same mechanism. So, yes, you do have to push that down in order to gauge the manual loading and unloading. So, yes, that's the same deck exactly. But it will, of course, have different heads. Well, probably has different heads. And definitely has a different board mounted on the back. Because this one has connectors there and this one doesn't. Let's pop in a large format tape on this one. This happens to be DVC Pro rather than DVCAM, but it should work fine. Oh, that's not good. Oh, there's tape slack all over the place. Oh dear, oh dear. That went quite badly. Let's try a small tape again. Right, that's working. When it laced, it did seem to stop at the same place that the other ones got to. Let's see if we can see that a little bit more. Let's watch that again. It stops there momentarily, and then does a tape shuffle, and then is ready to go. Okay, it's a little bit easier to see what's happening with a small size tape, but I don't think I can get a small size tape into this one now. One thing I can do though is straight away borrow this power supply. It's slightly complicated by the fact that I've got to unscrew something to do that, because it's actually quite well designed, a cable support here. So I've got to take that off. Okay, that does not fit. So yeah, this has got a center pin, whereas this one uses a more conventional. So no, I can't use the power supply as it stands from the other one. It doesn't fit, unless that fits. Oh, it does. Okay, without the adapter, right. Connected to the monitor. So this has BNC video output, and the prosumer deck has a phono connector. Oh, I'm getting something on screen now. Have I been suffering from power supply problems? that's sort of behaving itself. It's trying to play, but we could now be back to the original problem, which was that the cable was damaged from the head drum. Let's just try picture search. That mechanically is doing what it should be doing. We're just getting no output, which would imply possible problems with the output from the head drum. Well, I can get into the menus. How do you get to the second layer of menu? Right, so if I press and hold these buttons, I can get into more menu options. Right. Hours meter, I'd like to see that, and error history. Now we're getting a lot more information. So total hours 600. It's pretty low mileage machine. Virtual dip switches. Error history, we've had plenty of that. Supply reel failure with the last one. We'll clear them now. Execute. Right, we've cleared the errors, so any fresh errors we get, we'll be able to see what they are. Okay, I've done a factory reset, just in case it was left in some weird mode. I still think I'm getting nothing from the heads, which could just mean the heads need cleaning, but more likely we've got a problem with that cable. The whole machine is starting to work a little better. It's still got problems here. Let's try this DVC Pro tape for giggles. Shouldn't be able to read this. Wrong format for it. I'm getting loops of tape off this one. Yeah, there's a problem with its take up. It's sometimes doing things it shouldn't. It's as though it's got a problem. Yeah, the take up spool's not always working. We're getting slack tape. That happened with this tape as well. Yeah, see we've got slack tape again. Supply reel failure. Well, it's slack tape. And we're still getting no images or timecode. I heard a click then, which I think is a head cleaner. So we're still having some deck problems, and we're still not getting anything from the heads. It's actually playing that tape now. Okay, well, certain amount of progress. I'm sure this won't help, but let's try a head cleaner tape. Give that a few seconds. It's actually working. Okay, so our situation is then that we seem to have a bit of an intermittent problem with take-up slack, but the more I use the machine, the more that seems to be going away. So I might not want to spend too much time worrying about that yet, but we're not apparently getting anything out of the heads. Occasionally that figure will increase, which implies maybe it's getting something, but not much, which might mean I'm going to have to work further on the broken cable from the heads, which is something I did in my first video when I featured this machine. Alright, oh, and the other fault we're having is it gets confused when we hit eject, and I don't think that's down to light. I can make it dark, but it seems to be shuffling in and out when it ejects. Let's just see if we can demonstrate that. It should stop doing things now, and it feels like it's, I don't know what it's doing. It keeps detecting a tape that's not there, maybe. So that's a possible problem with some switches here, maybe. That may be fairly simple, but I don't think it's worth worrying about that just yet until we've got something out from the heads. Alright, this was the original fault with the machine as it was given to me. This flexi cable here had been broken, and I took the insulation off the end of it and refitted it into this connector, but I wasn't at all convinced that it was going to make good contact, and I believe it isn't. So I think I need to take that apart and do a better job. Let's have a look at that under the microscope, but really I need better access. So if I take the deck out, or pull the deck up a little bit to see if I get slightly better access to that. Here's the connector I'd worked on previously, so I'd had to take this insulation off the top here in order to be able to fit it, and in fact when I came to it just now I find it had fallen out completely, though that might have happened when I took the deck out of the machine. So what's supposed to happen is that's supposed to fit in here in this socket, but I don't think it's really going to make contact. So you see the contact at the bottom there, that's supposed to fit in there, and then you push this down and it grabs it and it'll make contact, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I am going to see if I can make a improvement to that situation. This flexi cable here goes over to the head drum at the top, so I believe that is the other end of it, and then that cable snakes its way down here. Is that it? Is that the one? Nope, it's not that one. That'll be the head motor then, that connection. This one must go underneath the head drum. Well, we can't see any of that without stripping all this out, so I don't want to go there. So replacing the cable completely from end to end is non-trivial. Probably wouldn't be able to get one anyway, and it might be that it's actually part of the whole drum assembly and is unavailable. So my best bet is to make an extension to this, and in my last video you'll have seen what I may have that could help with that. This is part of a scrap Sony camcorder whose contacts are the same pitch, so I could potentially use this to help create what I need. I couldn't use too much of it because the signal won't be properly shielded. I think this is shielding here on the top, but I could possibly give myself the length I need in order to make a right angle that goes down into this socket. I could even use this right angle. So if I was to cut a piece of this and make bare contacts like I've made there, could I solder onto those contacts? It would be non-trivial. What I'd have to do, I think, is glue the two pieces together, let the glue set, and then see if I can solder the wires on. Might be one of those jobs that once I've started I wish I hadn't, but you know, depends what happens when you try to solder onto this. It might just melt and fall apart. So I'd start soldering on here temporarily, just try a bit of soldering on here to practice. I need those to go into the socket, don't I? So how many contacts do I need? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that really is 2, 6, 7, 8. So I need 8 contacts of there and a length of about 1 centimetre probably. Okay, I can cut that with a pair of scissors and then see where I am. Well, I've managed to solder, sort of tin some of these pads, but they're pretty horrible. And whether I could actually solder wires onto them and do so without everything shorting together is a lot more debatable. This is not going to be easy. Yes, I can tin them. I can tin them. But how would I then make contacts? I'm going to make 8 wires across from the damaged cable onto the new one. So what I've done, I've taken some of the insulation off the end of my small patch wire here. One thing I learned when I tried to do that soldering earlier is you really have to get all of the insulation off. If you leave any on, then it'll make soldering extremely hard. So I've got it really clean and shiny. What I'm going to do next is fit this into the connector here and then use a multimeter to see if I can detect any conduction, any resistance at all to ground for each of these contacts, and hopefully I will, and that will prove that they're all making contact with some electronics in the head amplifier. So let's fit this, which is a little fiddly. Need a microscope for that. So with no reference at all at the moment to the wire we're actually trying to solder up, we're just going to fit this patch into the socket, connector, what have you. Make sure that's fully inserted. Close up the clamp. Okay, let's see if we can actually do a continuity check. These probes are a little bit blunt for this job, but let's see how we get on. I'm also checking for shorts as I go along. That's really good. That confirms that we have continuity right the way through to these copper, I don't know if you can quite see that because it's kind of facing the wrong way, but right the way through to those copper tracks. So now all I have to do is connect our broken fingers here to these, which is a little non-trivial because the angles are terrible. This is coming through at a very different angle to this. I could fold this over to overlap this. Maybe what I should do is take this off. Now I've proven that it works. Take it off and perhaps glue the two pieces together and then solder across the copper traces without getting any shorts. So that's going to be the tricky bit. You have to solder it on in such a way that it didn't short, and also in such a way that it didn't fall apart when I plug this in and go through those horrible angles. So could I solder that to that is my question. You know, looking at it like that it looks easy, but I'm sure I'd finish up with short circuits all over the place. And how would I keep these two in position while I do so? And there's a case for actually doing it at an angle like that to try to help fit it into the socket, because the socket is kind of there. So maybe if I can do them at an angle, then it might be less stress on it when I go to fit it. I think that's what I should do. Do you think I could just solder the two end connectors? You're getting a bit of glare, you might not quite see it, but if I can solder the two end points, maybe the rest will fall into place. The other thing I think I should do is now put the crease in that way round, because that's what's going to be necessary in order to fit it. So if I can do that now, I need to mount this in something. I suppose there's an argument for actually mounting it in the actual connector and solder in situ. Is that doable? If I was to fit this, I'd be guaranteed to not then stress it when I'm, going through fitting it, because I would already fitted it. Let's try that, I think. So do up the connector. Right, we're reasonably sure that all contacts are now made. So I need to just curl it round and solder it like that. What do you think? Is it doable? It keeps going off by one set of contacts. It needs to be lined up exactly. And it keeps sliding along by one. Right there is where it wants to be. Yeah, I can just see it, but how do I solder it? Right, I'm going for a slightly different soldering iron than I normally use, somewhat smaller. Well, that's not pretty, but it is holding it in place. It's way too much solder, but it's holding it in place. So I don't think it's shorting out either. So let's, with that one in place, see if I can solder some of the others in. I think I have that one too. Well, that's the two easy ones done, although the right hand side one will have to be done again. But now I've got any chance of doing the rest without short circuits all over the place. These centre ones, it doesn't matter if they short circuit because those two centre ones are the same, so that would be a good place to start. Okay, that's not bad, that. Yeah, so far so good. I've got 4 more contacts to make, but they're going to be the hard ones. So far so good, but just wait until I start short circuiting things together. It's going to get harder before it gets easier. Do I have that one? I'm not sure. Again, poke it with something. My view is better than yours on this. I think that's a good connection, yes. I'm going to have to test these with a meter later. Can I do the next one without shorting everything together? I can't tell if the solder is successfully bridging, if I'm getting breaks in it. These 3 all seem to have a line going through them, but is that a real line or is it just optical illusion? I think I'll have to meter those. Right, this clearly is a connection. Right, is this one a connection? Yes. Right, check for short here. Oh, it says it's a short. Though, that might not be real. Apparently that is not a connection. No, they're not good connections. I'm going to have to drop tiny pieces of copper wire in there, I think. Okay, that's most of the connections done. I've got 2 more to do, or 2 or 3 at this far end. I think I'll take a break. Okay, I have soldered all the connections, and it just doesn't look as good through the camera as it does in real life on the microscope, because I can see, the insulation between each of these contacts. I know I don't have short circuits here. I'll just support the cable slightly with this and let you see that maybe. So I can run this blade down each of the insulation gaps, and I can see that there's no solder bridges, but you kind of can't really see that so much on your view from the camera. I'm sorry about that. The camera just isn't as good as being here. But on each one there's no short circuits, and I've also metered out that all the connections are made. I can see that there are no short circuits and no open circuits, so I'm reasonably confident that the full set of connections are now made from the connector down there through to the flexi cable. Good. It's now worth reassembling this gently. What I'll do, if it works, I'll support that with some kind of glue. Not quite decided what kind of glue yet. But first let's very carefully put the deck back, make the connections up again, and give it a whirl. So how many connections are there? There's this, plugs into the base there, there's a big multi-way connector here, and these 2 connectors here. So I need to reconnect all of that lot. Okay, I think all connectors are back in. I just need to refit this board at least a little bit and refit the deck at least a little bit, and then we can test it. Okay, what do you think are the odds of us getting anything at all out of this? I'd love to know what your thoughts are, but we won't stop the video now and leave it as a cliffhanger. No, we'll give it a whirl, shall we? Now we know we have a bit of an issue with it loading and unloading at the front there, but I think we can overcome that. Okay, laced up okay. Shuffled backwards and forwards without any tape slack issues. Play. Absolutely nothing. Getting anything at all on the tape counter. So it appears we still have no output at all from the heads. I'm disappointed and surprised. I thought we might get something. So it's all a bit disappointing that we're still not getting anything out of this thing. I thought I'd go back and look at the DV3000 machine, for which I have at least part of the service manuals. This board at the back here does the same job. And you can see here there's a big screening can over the head amplifier electronics. And that has been taken off our target machine and lost. You can see kind of where the metal clips are here, one at the end, where it would have been held on. So that's bad news. Somebody's obviously been fiddling. So maybe there was a problem here prior to the head amplifier, the head connection cable being ripped off. But okay, thought I, we could still have a look at the RF output. And then we hit another problem. I don't have the service manual for our target deck, the HD50, but the service manual for the DV3000 says that you have to plug a special service board called a rewrite board into a socket at the back here, and from there you can pick up the head switching point and the envelope, and you can look at the output from the video heads. Now it's bound to be that signal's somewhere in here as well, but it'd be really quite hard to find. And of course on this one, where I don't have the schematics, it'd be completely impossible to find. So without that special service jig, I've got no chance. If there's a special service jig for this one as well, there's no chance of having a look at the RF envelope. That's just horrible. It makes maintenance of this equipment really difficult. I've had a look around here with magnifying glass, looking for whether there's anything that looks like head switching and RF output test points, but I can't see them, and there's every possibility they're not available for the reasons discussed. So I think we are stuck, which is very disappointing, having put in so much work. But it looks like the ripped cable from the output from the video heads was probably done by someone who was working on this deck and was not the original fault. And it did occur to me, why would that cable be ripped in normal conditions? That could never be ripped. So clearly someone had been working on here for some other reason. Right, so I think, unfortunately, that's the end of that. Unless anybody has a scrap machine of this model. Whatever's wrong with it, I'd take it, please, because it could help us to repair this one. And I've learned a lot more about this machine. Also, if anybody has got the proper service manual for this, in itself I can't fix it with just the service manual, but if I do get a scrap machine, then the service manual plus the scrap machine should get me going, I reckon. Right, that's been interesting, if unsuccessful, which unfortunately is becoming a bit of a theme because I've had a few videos like that lately. Like previously I was given some brand new N1700 heads and they turned out to be faulty, and there's nothing I could do with that either. Oh well, I'll do plenty more content on audio and video technology in the near future. Bye for now. Remember on the DV3000 there was a little connector at the back where you'd plug in the service board. Look, right in there, that looks to be the same kind of connector as used on the DV3000. So I reckon this also has a service board you have to plug in order to be able to get to the signals. That's really awful for serviceability, and maybe kind of indicates why JVC never really had the success in professional video equipment that Sony did, because Sony's equipment was always designed to be repairable, and JVC make mistakes like that.